Welcome into episode 47 of the Godly Young Men podcast. In this week's episode, we want to talk about the idea of entertainment choices.
Real quick, shout out to the folks up in Sandpoint, Idaho, Weston and Quentin. I believe they were brothers. Pretty sure they were brothers. If you're watching, shout out to you. It's great to meet you. But this was a suggestion by them, actually. This
nice.
topic was suggested. I asked them, it was good to meet them, and I asked them, hey, you're Godly Young Men podcast fans. What do you think we should do an episode on? And one of them said, I forget which one it was, but one of them said entertainment choices, and I love it. We haven't done that yet, and sure enough, we have not. So again, shout out, yeah. Great suggestion. That's where this spurred from.
That is a great suggestion. When you said it, I was like, didn't we cover that already?
I don't think we have.
Nope. So thank you. That's fantastic. And so that's what we wanted to do. So since they said it, we thought we want to hit this sooner than later. You just went up not too long ago, and also because we thought we had already done it, it's like, it's probably about time that we really get into this. Yeah, to this entertainment choices, because entertainment's a natural part of life. It's a natural part of culture. Our American culture is very big into entertainment. And we wanted to start with this off the top. God is not anti-entertainment.
That's right. I think this is kind of an older person problem. And as a young person, it would always drive me crazy. It seemed like the source of every problem in the world was Hollywood. And the source of every problem in the world is social media. Yeah. And the source of every problem in the world is entertainment. Older people do, I think, entertainment just gets absolutely lambasted all the time from older people. Like, you young people and your entertainment, you young people and your Netflix and all this stuff. And I get young people are kind of sick of hearing that. There's a lot of negative associated with entertainment, of course, that we're going to be discussing today. But we wanted to start with this because it's like, entertainment in and of itself is not sinful.
Right.
God is not anti-entertainment. In fact, I put on here, musical instruments, as a form of entertainment at least, have been around a long time. Genesis 4 is the first time we see them in the Bible. Genesis 4, fourth chapter of the Bible. And so, obviously you go back to the Shakespearean times with theater and all these things. And it's like, we think entertainment on Netflix and TV shows. Entertainment's been around a very, very long time.
Even Paul was very aware of the games.
Absolutely.
Right?
The Olympics were entertainment.
Exactly. He talks about boxing, talks about running, talks about things like that. He was very aware of it, meaning, seemingly, he was not condemning of it.
Correct.
He was talking about it as being okay. And so I think this is okay. Entertainment is absolutely okay.
And so we're going to come out and say we're not anti-entertainment
Correct.
either. Both of us enjoy various forms of entertainment. We're going to talk about a lot of these different forms, in this episode. Again, we're going to cover the negative, but we wanted to start with, like, it's okay to enjoy yourself, entertainment-wise.
Exactly. Because, as you said, some of the older generation may look down on that. We don't look down on it. We're going to come back around at the end a little bit more on what we think maybe you could enjoy and some things that we enjoy ourselves and such. And so in being positive or pro-entertainment, we'll get into some of that. But we also want to say right off the bat, it's the same as last one with social anxiety, where you can't specifically go to the Bible and say, this is exactly where it says not. Yes, there's some of those things. A lot of what we're talking about, it's not really a set list of what you can and can't watch, right? Or what you can and can't do.
And that's what people want. Let's face it. That's
exactly
what a lot of Christians want. It's like, man, just give me the list of what I can and can't watch. That way I don't have to think.
Nice and black and white. That way I know what's right and I know what's not right.
God doesn't want it that way.
Exactly. Yeah. You're presented some form of entertainment that's 50-50, right?
Yep.
Something that I don't know. There is a conscience aspect. And a lot of Christianity, though we don't want to admit it, a lot of Christianity is conscience-based. This is about wisdom. This is about bringing a Christ-likeness, a Christ-mindedness into the situation to figure out what would Jesus do. Yes, the little bracelets. We always go back and people made fun of those, and it was a huge cultural thing, and probably not as much to this generation watching. But the what would Jesus do bracelets, that's very real, and that's what we want to bring into this one is the wisdom, and again, having this mind like Christ. What would Jesus do with each of these entertainment choices?
And again, so the Bible does not say you can watch The Office, but you can't watch Game of Thrones. Like, that's not how it works. There are, like Joe said, there's wisdom and principles that need to go into these things. And the nice thing, and we'll get into in a second, is that there are outlets now with which you can kind of edit out some content, edit out language, whatever. And we'll talk about whether or not we think that's a good idea, etc. But we want to start with some biblical principles, because there are some biblical principles to this as far as, again, not necessarily a set list, but there are some things that we need to know. The Bible does have a lot to say about what we set our eyes on, the things that we're able to look at. So I've got Psalm 101 pulled up. I'm going to read verses 1 through 3. I will sing of mercy and justice, and it's a Psalm of David, by the way. I will sing of mercy and justice. To you, O Lord, I will sing praises. I will behave wisely in a perfect way. Oh, when will you come to me? I will walk within my house with a perfect heart. I will set nothing wicked before my eyes. I hate the work of those who fall away. It shall not cling to me. Principle there of not setting anything wicked before your eyes definitely falls into this entertainment discussion. Get into Philippians 4 very quickly.
The way we heard that growing up, or the way we memorized it, was, I will set no worthless thing before my eyes, no wicked thing, no worthless thing, something that's not going to be of value in some way, right? And some of those things are absolutely not only are they not going to be of value, we'll get into it, but they will absolutely hurt us, and that's the wicked side of it. Philippians 4, verse 8, we all know this one. Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellence and if anything worthy of praise, dwell on these things. Pretty straightforward there. I think this can be used. This is the rallying cry of moms everywhere to kind of beat their kids over the head of like, well, I guess that's not honorable if you're watching.
Doesn't look noble to me.
Exactly. Like you're reading some book and it's like, I'm sorry, does that fall in Philippians 4? We realize that's the case, but this is still a fantastic principle. I don't think this discourages you from watching every form of entertainment, but it is something to keep in mind of like, you know what, if this really is not leading my mind in a way that, or if it's leading it in a way I don't want it to go, if it's the exact opposite of these things, okay, maybe let's consider pumping the brakes on that one, right? Let's consider going in this direction, because Philippians 4, Psalm 101, just
to give an example, the one that I struggle with still now, because I very much used to enjoy this form of entertainment, was horror movies. We covered that on Think Deeper, and this verse is tough to get around as if you're a horror movie fan of like, especially the slasher stuff, which I never really got into, but like, is it the demonic, Conjuring, Annabelle, those types of ones that, man, it's fun for me to watch them because I get the exhilaration, the excitement, but is it noble? Is it honorable? This gives you reason to think, I'll say, but that personally has been a struggle for me. And, those typically don't have any other content in them, so there's way worse stuff that's kind of the opposite of Philippians 4.
Well, and that's the big thing for me is the opposite. I can watch a hockey game. Can I say it's true and honorable and lovely? And I mean, yeah, I could. But
a lot of moms would say, nope, don't think so.
Exactly. A lot of people are like, there's fighting in that. That's horrible. No, I don't think, I think to your point specifically, the things like the slasher film, in my opinion, are the exact opposite. Yeah. Whereas some of the things, maybe they're neutral, maybe they're not leading us directly toward it, but they're really not leading our minds away from it either. It is just entertainment. Some of those things are like, that's the exact opposite of honorable, the exact opposite of lovely, the exact opposite of all those things. And so we wanted to start with, obviously, the key here is the movies, shows,
because there's various forms of entertainment. Right. We're going to talk briefly about music. We're going to talk about video games. Predominantly here, movies and shows is what people are entertained by. Netflix, HBO. I mean, how many streaming services are there now?
Peacock, Paramount,
Hulu, HBO Max,
Apple
Disney
TV.
Plus, Apple. Literally, like we just named 8, in 5 seconds. And so, movies and shows is kind of the majority, kind of the bulk of it, the key one, as you said. And so we've got a few principles here. The first one that we're going to deal with is kind of the nudity and sexual content, and then we'll talk about language. We'll talk about violence. First principle is, if it's got nudity in it, don't watch it.
I have a very short leash on this.
Yeah, go ahead and go off on this.
I've got a very, very short leash on this. People that watch Game of Thrones, I watch it for the action. No, you don't. No, you don't. Don't kid yourself. You need to be highly aware of what is in these TV shows. There's things like Yellowstone. Everybody goes nuts about Yellowstone. There's a lot of content issues with that, but I've never watched it. My understanding is there's some serious sexual content in that. In most of these shows, there is, and a lot of people. And this is the way it always goes. First season is fairly clean a lot of the time, and then they start introducing a lot in seasons 2, but you're hooked. And so now I got to watch it. And so the sexual content ramps up, and every other part of the content ramps up. Very short leash on any sexual content, specifically nudity, because of how quickly this goes downhill. I mean, this is like, it will lead you down a path you don't want to go like that. I mean, as fast as possible. And you think, it's just TV. I'm not watching porn. It's a TV show.
Soft porn, first of all.
It is, exactly. It is pornographic by nature because it's a sexually, arousing thing. But also, how quickly does it, I stay away from porn, but now I'm watching some girl and, maybe I'm lusting more than I thought I was. So, maybe I'm ogling a little more than I thought I was.
So I've got 2 points on here because they're somewhat different. I've got don't watch anything with nudity in it. The other thing that I added is if lust might be an issue for you, don't watch it.
Right.
Because you could look at it as, there's no nudity in the show. Awesome. That doesn't mean that you could watch it and not have lustful thoughts. And so this is where I have Job 31 verse 1. I have made a covenant with my eyes. Why then should I look upon a young woman? Job decided I'm not going to do that. And so this is where you have to do the work ahead of time to kind of figure out what's in shows, what's in movies. Right. I'll admit, when I was young, I want to go see that movie. I didn't care what was. It's exciting. Or it looks like an exciting movie. Maybe it's a popular movie, whatever. If you want to be a godly young man, you got to do some work on the front end to look up, review sites and things that we'll get to. But you need to know, like Oppenheimer, for instance. Man, that looked like a good movie.
Yep.
I really wanted to go see Oppenheimer. Looked it up. I was like, whoa, I can't go see that in the theaters.
Lots of sexual content.
Sexual content, graphic nudity, apparently, again, from what I read. And so, yeah, it's a bummer, you might say. It's like, man, I'm not going to get to the movie now. There's filtering that we'll get to, but yeah, make that decision. That if lust might be an issue, you're not going to watch that.
And I'm just going to say, if lust might be an issue, we're godly young men.
Yeah,
like
that's true.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, most of the time, it's probably going to be an issue if it's overt. Now, if there's one quick scene, look, it's a judgment call. I still wouldn't go see it. That's my background and everything. But at the same time, just use wisdom when it comes to this.
Sorry, I'm
no, go for it.
I was say what I meant with that point is like just because there's not nudity in it doesn't mean that there's not going to be a lot of opportunity to lust. Yeah, like you could look up a review site and say, "Oh, cool, there's no nudity," but yeah, they're in bathing suits the entire episode.
Exactly.
You know,
they spend the entire time on a ship and they're all in bikinis. No, we're not going to do that, right? We're not putting any worthless thing before our eyes. It's to your point. I made a covenant with my eyes. How then can I gaze at a virgin? Memorize that one. Believe in that one. Recognize this problem. We don't want to spend too long, but let's be honest. When it comes to entertainment choices, this is like numero uno on this. Now, here's another question you got on the outline, though. We don't watch anything with overt sexual content.
And overt sexual content, obviously, just to kind of spell out what we mean, because there's overt and there's implied. Yeah. Overt is they're showing it on the screen. Yep. You know, the camera doesn't cut away. Like there's not much left of the imagination. What you're about to ask was about implied.
What about implied sexual content?
Which obviously, scene cuts away. You know, maybe the first 2 or 3 seconds, you know what's going on. Yeah. And so, yeah, I put that on there because I think a lot of Christian parents would say, yeah, that needs to be out as well. This is where the wisdom and principles come in. If you decide as a godly young man, I'm not going to watch those things, great. I think that's awesome. You know, if parents are deciding, I don't want my kids watching that, I think that's great. I'm not going to decide that either. Or I'm going to decide that as well. I don't want my kids watching that either. This is where I do think, unfortunately, it is a judgment call on a lot of these things. It's a do the research, read. Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into the filtering sites or the review sites real quick because I think that's helpful to the conversation. There's Kids in Mind and there's Plugged In.
Yep.
Kids in Mind is very like technical. Like it just gives you, here's what happens. You know, here's the things to watch out for. It breaks it down into sex and nudity, violence and gore, and then profanity. And so for the sex and nudity point, for this one, for the implied sexual content, it'll tell you, you know, what articles of clothing are removed or what's implied or what you see and when the camera moves. That's pretty helpful because then you get to make the judgment call. Plugged In kind of sort of does that as well. What I like about Plugged In is it also speaks to the theme of the movie. Yeah. And like, is this a theme worth going to see? So I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that point, but man, make use of those because a lot of these, unfortunately, are going to be a bit more of a judgment call.
Common Sense Media is one I would actually avoid. Those are secular parents a lot of the time.
Okay.
So
I'm not even familiar with that one.
Yeah, Common Sense is a big one. You'll see that on Google a lot if you look that up. We know which ones to go to, so I just go right to Plugged In. But if you were to Google that, Christian movie reviews or whatever, Common Sense comes up. Not a big fan of it. I've looked it over. There's some movies that I know are very problematic that they're like, oh, well, it's not that bad.
It's fine,
no, it's real bad. So I would avoid that one. But yeah, Plugged In is my go-to where I'll just look because it breaks into spiritual content if it's like majorly atheist or something. Sexual content, it goes into even other negative things in the movie like that aren't necessarily fitting those things. So make use of those, specifically if there's a big movie that you really want to go see. The temptation is to do exactly as you said, and I've done this too.
I'll just go watch it. Yeah.
I'll just go watch it, and then, I can't believe all those things were in there. Like, yeah, okay. You know,
that's why I brought up though with Oppenheimer. I looked it up on Plugged In.
Yeah,
because I assumed there was going to be nothing in it. Like, oh, cool, it's Christopher Nolan. He never has anything bad in it. And I looked it up, and I was like, you have got to be kidding me.
Hated that.
Yeah.
Hated it because first good movie in forever. You
True.
know, like a original movie, I should say, because nothing happens these days that is not just a rerun. But to the implied sexual content, it seems like a cop-out. Really, it seems like a cop-out. That's going to move us into number 2, which... Yeah, go for it.
Real quick, I wanted to say on this note about like the Oppenheimer point, you're going to miss out on some things.
Yes, you are.
You're just going to have to miss out on some things. I don't have that on here, but let's make that number 3. You're going to have to miss out on some things. You're going to have to miss out. You're going to have to miss out on Game of Thrones. I'm sorry. You're going to have to... You're going to have to miss out on 50 Shades of Grey. You're going to have to miss out on... There's another big show. Euphoria. That was a really bad one on HBO Max. Like, you're just going to have to miss out on some things. And that's one of those things that, for young people, it's really tough when all your friends are talking about, the latest episode, whatever. Did you binge watch XYZ? You're going to have to miss out on it. I don't know what you had to add, but that's something as a Christian, you're going to have to sacrifice. And not catching up on the latest XYZ show that nobody's going to care about in 3 years is one of those things.
I thought about that a little bit ago. I'm glad you brought that back up because I forgot to come back around to it. It will absolutely cost you to do this. There were so many times where all my buddies at hockey are talking about this one movie or whatever. Oh, that's hilarious. Did you catch this one scene? No, I didn't. I didn't watch it. What? You haven't seen it? Like, you feel really like, oh, man, I'm out of it. I'm just, I'm embarrassed now because everybody knows it. That's okay. Because now, once again, nobody thinks about it.
Godly young man.
Like, you're a godly young man, and it stands out, and they go, what? You don't watch it? It's like, no, I don't put that. I put no worthless thing in front of my eyes, and I don't see how that's going to, that's not entertaining to me. Because that's really what we have to get down to is, well, it's entertainment.
Why is it entertaining?
Yeah, what is entertaining about me potentially ruining my relationship with God for this? You know what I mean? And yes, that's putting it at like, that seems a bit extreme. Yes and no. Yes and no. I'm choosing to put something that's going to lead towards sin for the purpose of entertainment. Would you go to a strip club? Right. Well, that's entertainment. There's certain entertainments you don't want to go to because it is absolutely taking you away from God. And this is very much one of them. It's going to seem like a cop-out when we talk about some of these things being a... it's a wisdom matter, right? It's a matter like that.
None more so than this next one.
None more so than the next one. There's a little bit of sexual content that falls into that. The implied sexual content, it very much is going to be based on where you are in your Christian walk, what you think you can handle. Be aware of that. I would lean more toward the conservative side.
For sure, yeah.
We get into language. Number 2, I would say, as we're kind of going down this list, we get into language. How much is too much?
Yeah.
This is the real difficult question because as a kid, I think our parents are like, absolutely not. This if it's not like... There are a couple PG-13 movies we could see. I think Star Wars was one of them.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Pirates of the Caribbean. Few of them, though, because, man, that has like 12 cuss words in it. Well, nowadays, you look at 12 cuss words, you go, that's only got 12 cuss words? Wow, that's not... You know what I mean? The culture has shifted so much.
And let me tell you what most Christian parents, if they're watching this, are going to basically be thinking of like, man, more than 2 or 3, and that's, you shouldn't watch it at all. Well, why is your line 2 or 3? Why isn't your line 0? Because that's what I kept going back to when I was young and my parents did a really good job of, again, not making sure that we kept by certain principles, but it very much was it was still a judgment call for them because of language. And it's like, is your number 5? Is your number 10? Is your number 15, 20? You know what I mean? Obviously, the further down you go, you're going the wrong direction. But at the same time, everybody's got a line of, okay, it's close. I can still watch it. And then, the line is like, no, I can't go over the line. It's that many cuss words, whatever. And so a lot of Christian parents are going to want us to say like, oh, any cuss words? No, you shouldn't go see it. I simply don't think that's realistic. And I think that's, again, a bit idealistic. I think a lot of Christian parents, that's not their line either, even if they want to think that it is. That's not their line. And so this is where I would say, unless you have anything to add to this is where we need to use resources that we have at our disposal. VidAngel, ClearPlay. You probably know a little bit more about them than I do, but essentially they're filtering services where you can watch stuff on Netflix, you can watch stuff on Amazon Prime, and I forget Paramount I think is the other one. There's another big streaming service they use. But anyway, you can watch that stuff and cut out the language. Yeah. Literally, you don't have to listen to it.
And sexual content.
Yeah, and of course, and the other stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Specifically for this point, you don't have to. You don't have to hear it. And so I would say definitely make use of that.
Yeah, no doubt. There used to be TV Guardian. We go all the way back. My mom had all of them.
When you said a second ago, like your buddies has all seen the latest movie, and it's like for now for young people it's shows. It's not movies.
Exactly. It's not movies. When I was growing up, it was movies, but nowadays it's TV shows for sure. Like you said, Euphoria or something like that. But yeah, Mom was in TV Guardian. We had Hollywood Films. All these went out of business because Hollywood was like, wait, you're actually editing our films? VidAngel and ClearPlay are very good at how they've done that. They've done a lot of lobbying to get to that point where you can make use of those. Yeah. Absolutely make use of those. There's no reason, if you can cut out the cussing, there's no reason to just listen. It's the same thing as like explicit music we'll get into in a second, but
it goes back to Philippians 4:8.
Yeah. That's exactly it. Like I could listen to the explicit version of the album or I could listen to the cleaned up. Why would you not listen to the cleaned up version? It's better to not have
what do you say? Because I've heard this one before. Christian parents that would be like, well, if it's explicit, why would you even listen to it cleaned up? If it's a bad movie, why would you even watch it? That's what even cleaned up.
Yeah, that's very true.
That's what I hear a lot. Yeah. And yeah, what's your answer? I'll start there. I'm putting you on this was not on the outline.
It's not on the outline. I wish it was
on the spot here, but this is one of those things that I guarantee you a lot of Christian parents are probably thinking is like, well, if it's got 17 cuss words and you can cut out all 17, is it really worth going to see or really worth watching or streaming? I think if you can cut it out. Like, and I don't personally have a problem with it. I'll let you answer, but
I don't have a problem with that at all. And the reason why is you're never going to get away from everything. Do you let your kid go to work? Like, there's a ton of cussing there. So when you put it in real world principles, but if you can't avoid it, why wouldn't I am avoiding it? That's why I have ClearPlay. I am avoiding those things. Well, but if it's a movie that has all this bad content that needs to be cut out, why watch it anyway? because there is a level of entertainment in it. It can be an entertaining movie. I don't want to watch all those things, but I can enjoy it for the work of art or whatever that it is. So if you cut those things out, I feel like there's not as much of a problem there. Where I have a problem with a lot of those parents is it's very two-sided. They grew up watching Footloose, and they grew up watching
Top Gun.
Top Gun.
Come on.
All of these things that are like, oh man, that's not good. Oh well, we've learned, and we've. Why did you want to watch those things when you were a kid, right? Why did you want to?
I'm going to tell all my parents, I don't think they watch or listen to this podcast at all, but you know how many times that we tried to watch a movie from the 80s, they're like, oh, this is such a great movie, and we got like 6 minutes in, and was
Breakfast Club or
we
something?
can't watch this. E.T. was one,
yeah.
A Christmas Story, like the language in it was like, yeah, we can't watch this.
No kidding.
It's like, phew, goes right over their heads sometimes.
But as a kid, they have to go back to remembering what it was like to be a kid, because we don't want to miss out on every cultural thing. And there are certain things that are cultural. Everybody knew what E.T. was at the time. Of course you wanted to watch E.T. if you could, right? Everybody knew what Back to the Future was. Back to the Future's got a ton of language in it, right? But everybody wanted to be involved in that. It's no different as a kid. We want to know these things, and that's okay if we can clean it up. So that's what I would say to parents is I'd kind of implore them, remember what it's like to be a kid where everybody else is talking about it. As we said, you may miss out on some things. The Wolf of Wall Street, yeah, you're going to miss out on that one.
Like 800 cuss words, yeah.
My goodness, it's horrible. If you can, I don't clean that one up. If there's like 500 plus cuss words, there's really no point.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if it's going to be like a 20-minute movie by the
if
time
the Wolf of Wall Street was VidAngel, it'd be like a 17-minute movie.
Legitimately, yeah. Like, don't go watching that one. I've never seen it, but you pretty much guess what's in it, and we did look it up, and I remember looking it up on Plugged In, because there were Christians that were talking about it, and it's like, what? Yeah. That's one of those where you question if you're still a Christian after. I'm sorry, but if I see Christians posting on things like that, and when they went to the movie theaters, I am judging you, and you go, well, don't judge people. No, I'm judging you. If
you're putting that on Facebook, I'm judging you.
That's exactly it. So be smart about it.
But to this point, for all you godly young men, VidAngel is an app that you can download.
Yes,
you can go get it on your computer, and you link your Netflix subscription to it. It's Prime, and there's one other one. I don't think it's Paramount. I don't remember what it is, but there's a couple other ones you can link to it. And you can literally watch your Netflix shows.
I think it's like $10 a month, maybe, but Netflix is more expensive than that. So
use that.
Yes, make use of that. As far as it goes to the language, we'll wrap it up and get to the next one. I would just say, as you said, everybody has a specific line. Your line will probably progressively get more the older you get. I would actually encourage you, if you are 15, if you're under 20 years old, I'd have a pretty small line. And that sounds so dumb, like, well, why is it different? And I hear a lot of parents, well, if my kids can't watch it, why should you be watching it as an adult? Because we as adults engage more with the world.
I heard so much cussing in my 2 years of Amazon, more than I'll ever hear ever again, probably, when I was at Amazon, of
same thing in
the
hockey.
people that I worked with,
I mean, it was nonstop. Every other word was a cuss word. When you get used to it, I'm not saying you should just go listen to it all the time.
Yeah.
Your threshold does increase. If you're under 20 years old and you're really not used to listening to it all that much, man, I would keep that threshold small, because you don't know if that's going to affect the way you talk.
Because it still might, right.
It is wrong to cuss. We know that. So, let no unwholesome word come from our mouth. We want to make sure at the end of Ephesians 4 and Ephesians 5 that we are abiding by that. And if you are going to be swayed by listening to all of this cussing, listening to explicit Eminem albums and everything, and those words start coming into your vocabulary,
or even into your head,
or into your head, where you're starting to think through cuss words, you're listening to too much. You clearly allowed it to affect your thinking and your reasoning and your words. If it hits that point, cut it off and have your threshold be at like G level movies. So that's all I'll say to
Let's get into the next one, because it very much ties in. Violence is another one. Like if you go to Plugged In, that'll have a violence content category. And this is one that mixed reviews on from Christian parents, I would say. I know a lot of Christian parents that it's like, no, absolutely not. And a lot of Christian parents is like, does it have language? Does it have sexual content? If not, everything else is free game. It doesn't matter. Violence is a tough one, because you have movies like The Patriot, Braveheart. Really, really good movies. Like The Patriot has got, maybe 2 or 3 cuss words, like hardly any, but the violence is crazy. Pirates of the Caribbean, I brought up earlier, has got some violence. There's a lot of movies that they can have a lot of violence, and so Christians want to know, and godly men want to know how much is too much. And what I put down, and so I'll spell it out very quickly and then give it to you. It very much ties into what you just said. If it's going to if you think it's going to negatively impact your thoughts, don't watch it. For instance, I can watch The Patriot and I don't have violent thoughts afterwards. I can watch Hacksaw Ridge, like military movies, have a lot of violence in it. I'm not going out thinking, man, violent thoughts, wanting to shoot people, whatever. Some people, that it affects them that way, of like, man, like their violent streak comes out or whatever. And so if you're thinking violent thoughts, if you're like, enjoying watching the carnage. Like, there's just a lot of indicators that, like, okay, you should probably not watch violent stuff. Will, that's really subjective. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Like, Will,
exactly.
You're not giving me a set list. I know that's it. I mean, because the other thing that we haven't gotten into yet, I want to bring it up. You know how much violence is in the Bible? You know how much sexual content's in the Bible?
It's the most violent book of all time.
Like, there's a lot in the Bible. It's like, well, we're still going to do that. And so I'm not saying that to justify watching just horrifically, graphically violent stuff. At the same time, you know your own thoughts. You know the things that are going through your head. And if watching a movie, again, maybe a war movie, and you know you're like enjoying the violence or whatever it is, there's just several indicators where it's like maybe you should watch something a little more tame.
Yeah. My dad always said, my dad's got a lot of quotes. My dad always said, once it goes in, it never comes out.
Yeah.
Make sure you know what you're putting in front of your eyes, because, wow, boy, I didn't need to see this guy get impaled in such a way. I didn't want to see that, to be honest with you. You know, Braveheart's got some content issues. I remember the first time we watched it, Dad's like, well, I know where to skip. So he skipped like the nude scene or whatever. You skipped all over that. And then it's like, you needed to skip all the violent scenes,
violent stuff,
which is the movie. So, you know what I mean? Like,
It'd all be over, yeah.
I remember being a kid, like, and I think I was 10 or 11. And of course I was the youngest. And so my siblings were like, you get to watch this? We're 18. You know, but I had no business watching it at that time. Because once it goes in, it doesn't come out.
Yeah.
I didn't want to see some of those things. And I actually went in the room after like 20 minutes of the movie or whatever. I went in the room and was like, I don't really want to watch this. I've always been squeamish for those things. You may not be. Okay, good for you. I am. I know where my line is. My threshold is not near as far. I can't handle knives. I can't handle things like that. I don't know why. Psychological issue, whatever it is. I don't want to see it. It's the same thing for violence. You know, for you, any sort of violence, just be aware.
Let's go ahead and rope in video games here.
Yeah.
We got one other thing to say on the movies and shows, kind of Hollywood angle, but for video games, I think this definitely applies too. Like,
yeah,
Grand Theft Auto. Sorry, you probably shouldn't be playing that one.
That's exactly.
There's a few others. I'm not a video game person. I've played Madden and NBA 2K in the last 12 months for probably a total combined like 12 hours. Like that's it. Like, I'm not a video game person.
I played Diddy Kong Racing on N64.
Yeah, exactly.
Shout out to the old consoles. Yeah.
So I'll admit, I'm not well versed in Call of Duty. I'm not well versed in Fortnite or anything like that. At the same time, I know there's a lot of violent video games out there. There's a lot of video games like Grand Theft Auto where it literally is about breaking the law and hooking up with prostitutes and all these things. Listen, that's common sense. Like, I don't know what you had to add on
Assassin's
video
Creed,
games.
Diablo, you know, some of the other big ones that are out there. Be cognizant, be aware, especially as I think how you said it earlier. If you find that you're like enjoying it, I don't know. And I also find Halo is big in my day. Nobody cares about Halo now, but that was huge. But it was aliens, right? It wasn't like overtly gross. You'd snipe them from far away, and you're killing aliens. That felt a little bit different than hand-to-hand combat where you're having to do something gross and graphic. Once again, it's a threshold. It's a judgment call. It's a judgment call. I would err on the side of, as godly young men, don't put too much in your mind. Well, we're tough men. We're used to this. You know, it's fine as men. Don't be an idiot about it, and don't be Mr. Macho Alpha Male because, wow, I can take a lot of violence. Okay, good for you. Yeah. Good for you. But you know what? Let's just try to be sensible men that don't necessarily rush to the violent content because, wow, we're men. Yep. Just don't be that guy. But yes, it's all kind of there. Get us into the last point before we move into the other parts. Get us into the last
We'll hit music, podcasts, and VR very, very briefly because we're already almost at the 30-minute mark. But the last thing that we wanted to say about this entertainment, movies, music, or movies and shows kind of category is don't let Hollywood shape your view of the world. Yeah. This is something that I think, could be even not more of a threat, but could be just as potent of a threat as the sexual content, language, or whatever, is young people that kind of let the latest show, the latest movies, Hollywood actors and actresses and their social life and who they're dating and all this stuff, they can get sucked into that and it can really impact their view of the world. Yeah. And so, don't be mistaken. Hollywood has an agenda. Disney, as we talked about, has an agenda. Like, there are things that they want young people to think are normal that are just not. And so I would be that's the last thing I would say is maybe there's a movie that got hardly any bad content in it, but it's just not a good thematic movie. That's why I pointed y'all to plugged in, because it does kind of hit at the theme of the movie. Like the conclusion category when Plugged In reviews a movie is essentially, is this movie worth watching? Yeah. What are the themes of the movie? What are the things that you're gonna come away from the movie with? And so that would be, I don't have any kind of objective, here's again what to watch, what to not watch. I would just warn you godly young men, be very careful of letting Hollywood, through their movies, through their shows, shape your view of the world, because it's not a realistic one. That's exactly it. We were talking off air a little bit before this about the idea of Seinfeld, Friends. Now we're seeing a bunch more
I'm dating myself horribly in all of these
our,
things.
our godly amen don't know what those
they're
two
like,
are.
what in the world is that? They're sleeping with one another all the time. They always got a new girlfriend. They're always, trying to basically have sex. That can be presented as normal, and that can be a worldview shaper. And I think it did. I think the reason you see so much like casual sex and fornication all over the place
Shows
is
like that.
because of shows like that, where it just gets in our mind where this is normal. This is just what you do. Of course, you're with a new girl all the time. Like, you're just trying to get the hottest girl. It's those type of things that you're speaking of, and that's just a specific subset of them shaping our worldview, them shaping the way we think about everything else of, oh, well, that's normal. Maybe it's not.
Yeah.
Maybe that's Hollywood just showing it. And as you said, there are some movies, I remember like Foxcatcher being one of them. So Steve Carell, it was, and it was him, like his first serious role. It got a R rating and there was hardly any content. Like, it was not that bad of content. It was such a dark film.
Yeah.
Right? The whole theme of the film was like, ugh, that's not as good, right? Be aware of things like that. Like, okay, content-wise, it's fine. We can go watch it. But if the whole thing's just going to be a downer, we go back to Philippians 4:8. Is that really something that we want to be aware of? So, or that we want to watch? Be aware of these things. Be aware of how you've allowed Hollywood into your home, how you've allowed Netflix into your heart, how you've allowed them into your mind. Are you letting them shape you, or are you recognizing this is entertainment purposes, but I realize this is not right? And we can point out, you can even use TV shows to point out where certain sins are. Nobody wants to be that guy where you go over and watch a movie with your friends like, oh, well, he just cussed there. You don't want to be that guy, but at the same time, be aware of the content issues.
Don't become desensitized to it.
Correct.
Is what I would
Perfect
say.
way of saying it. That puts a bow on it. Don't become desensitized to it. Let's get into the last little bit, because we already mentioned, I mentioned music a little bit, right? The explicit music. And I would say, same thing, see how it affects your worldview, because they can talk about all sorts of themes. Rap music, pretty out on. I am aware of rap music, and I do listen to some of it, all cleaned up, because it's horrible if it's not, and some of it, it's still horrible even if it is. That
the
is one of
genre
those.
Itself, for the most part, is pretty degenerate, though.
Yes, it is. So very, very careful on that one. I would make sure that is not your genre of choice. That's not where you're going to. Occasionally, there's a song here or there, but once again, I would make sure it's cleaned up and see how it affects your worldview. There's a reason why the rap culture, this is going to sound really bad, it's diseased.
Yeah.
It is not a good culture. The money and girls and
Violence
and gangbanging and all of those things, that's not good. That's not content that we really want to put in our minds. Specifically the music videos, you don't want that either. Just be aware of that.
Yeah, I'm going to let you get into the second point about music, because you added it on there. I think it's great. Whenever I was thinking about, okay, how are we going to talk about music? Because, again, people want a list. There's not a list. Right. Sorry. Again, like, there's the most frustrating thing in the world. Like, there'll be a really, really good song, and it's got a cuss word or two, and it's like, oh, my goodness, you got to be kidding me. Once again, you got a mute button. You got, various things. And so it's not a matter of, okay, if it's got a cuss word, I can't listen to it. But if it doesn't, and you know what I mean? Like, people do all these calculations in their head. Like, there are principles here. There's wisdom here behind. Yeah, that album is, every single song is explicit. Every single song has got overt sexual content in it. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to download that album. Things like that, where it's very, very obvious. It's the gray area ones that, of course, are the ones that people want to ask about, and the ones that we don't have answers for. As far as like, yes, you can listen to this, you can't listen to that. Philippians 4:8, Psalm 101, like all these things that we brought up. The only thing I would say is, don't let it affect your worldview. I've known or heard of people who, solid Christians, grew up, got very much into the hard metal rock, or heavy metal rock, I should say, genre, lost their faith. Worldview's gone. Yeah. Was it just because of the music? Probably not, but at the same time, music can very much affect your worldview. So
who you hang out with, the clothing choices, everything follows. It all comes together if you start listening to death metal, and next thing you know, it's you're looking goth, and there's a lot of godlessness in that. Yeah, absolutely it does.
Yeah, that's all I would say there.
The second thing I was going to say is be careful about the concerts. Oh, I love Taylor Swift. I want to go to her concert. She dresses like a hoe. Okay? I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I just did. She dresses horrible.
Beyonce,
definitely don't go to Cardi B, things like that, like Nicki Minaj. Please. As I said,
don't listen to female rappers.
Female rappers are horrible, to begin with. Be very aware of the concerts. I've been to bazillion and one concerts in my life. I always make sure the music is clean. I remember there have been a couple concerts where the openers, I didn't know who they were. Makes me very uncomfortable because, man, everything was an F-bomb or whatever it is. Like, I'm not comfortable with that. Or they had, an opener had an immodest chick. And I would go stand in the back and, like, basically you can't leave. But I'd go to the back where they're selling shirts and just hang there for a while because I didn't want to see that. Be aware of who you're going to see when it comes to the concert. Entertainment-wise, concerts are fantastic. I don't think you're as big of a concert guy. I've been to a lot of them. They're great. there's also some content issues there. So obviously, you're not getting the clean version either. So don't go to rap concerts, things like that.
Do the 2-minute version of podcast in VR.
I don't even
one
know
other thing to say.
I don't think I need 2 minutes. I need about 15 seconds on podcast. There's a lot of podcasts that have negative content, specifically comedic, where there's a lot of sexual content, where they're making jokes sexually, or they're cussing quite a bit. Be very aware of those. Once again, gray area, things like Joe Rogan. I know there's a lot of cussing on there. I don't listen to 3-hour podcasts. I'll catch clips here or there. There are going to be some cuss words in it. I'm very aware of that. You have to know that going in.
The other thing is your time is going to be so eaten up with the Godly Young Men podcast Think Deeper.
And
like
Think
you're just not
Deeper,
going to have time to listen to all these other ones. So
good point.
That problem is already solved for you.
That's right. That's right. So just be aware on the podcast of the content issues. We already talked about video games. The violence is a problem. The sexual content is a problem. Be aware of what you're doing, because when you're in those worlds, video games have a way to suck us in, right?
Yeah.
When you're in those worlds. That gets us into the last one, which is VR. Virtual reality. I don't know. Do you have much to say on it? All I would say is that is a form of entertainment that can go off the rails very, very quickly. Specifically,
young people are getting hooked on porn through Oculuses now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's much more visceral and real than it ever has need to be. And I'm not telling you that to go look it up. Please.
Yep.
I would throw the Oculus away. I'd give it away if you had one. There's a reason I don't have the Oculus. Oh, wow, it's super cool. It's entertaining. It's entertaining for about 2 seconds till you fall on your face playing a game, and then it's like, I've used my brother-in-law's Oculus to do the saber battle. Sure, it's fun for a time.
Beat Saber, sure. Yeah.
Is that what? Yeah. Hey, I would avoid it if you can, because it so quickly goes downhill, even on YouTube. People don't know what you're watching. There's no way for the parents to come in the room and see the monitor or whatever. Yeah. I said monitor. Wow, man, I'm old. see the
screen,
the computer screen, the iPad, the even the phone or whatever. Like, there's no way to see it. I'm out on VR. Personally, I'm very wary of that. So
I like that take. That's a good take. Yeah. I've got one other thing I want to say about this, because we have not covered sports as a form of entertainment, and anybody who watches this knows we're big sports fans. Yep. You're literally wearing a Gretzky jersey. I am wearing a soccer jersey my dad got me from Brazil. Not that I know the second or third thing about soccer. However, it looked cool. So I'm going to say, because when we're talking about the way entertainment can go off the rails, I think the way that, like, one of the forms of entertainment that can least go off the rails is sports. Yeah. And so I would recommend, I'm a sports guy. I'll admit, not everybody is. I would recommend, if you're like on the market for a new form of entertainment, consider sports. Like, there's cheerleaders that get like 2 seconds of screen time. Stay away from that. But other than that, football, basketball, hockey, it's a good way. It's a good form of entertainment. Like, we've got a 2-year-old, and literally he's not allowed to watch any kind of TV or any kind of screen unless there's football or sports on, and he'll watch that. But I would just say that, like, there's not a lot of problematic things with sports content. Again, cheerleader here and there, just don't look. But I don't know if you got anything to add. I would recommend Godly Young Men. Like, I would rather you do that than play Call of Duty, I guess is my point. I would rather you do that than binge watch 12 hours of Netflix a week. Yeah. Like,
there are redeeming elements to sports.
Sure, yeah.
There's a lot of redeeming elements, actually. And I think we may have talked about this in another podcast, but, like, sports have aspects that I think can be very good in the teamwork and the hard work and everything else. I think that's very good to have that in front of your. Again, the Apostle Paul, like, sports have been going on for a long time. And it
circles us back around to there's nothing wrong in and of itself with entertainment. There are very valid forms of entertainment. There's really good movies out there. There's really good shows out there that don't have any content that you can watch. Sports, no bad content in it. So, like, entertainment in and of itself is not bad.
Right. We
just have to be very, very careful. So that's my one little plug for everybody who's watching this to become a sports fan. I know not everybody will, but this is a tough one. I'll admit. I appreciate, again, the shout out to Weston and Quentin for the episode suggestion, but this is a tough one for Godly Young Men, because the temptation is there with the access on our phones. We have Netflix and on our computers and whatnot, and so the temptation is there. Be godly young men about it. Have common sense. Consider these scriptures and the principles, the wisdom element that we've discussed, because it can go off the rails very, very quickly. Yep. And when you're ready to lead your family, you're going to want to know how to handle these things. When your 12-year-old says, "Hey, Dad, can we watch this?" or "Can I go watch this?" Have a plan. Be ready for that. So anything you've got to add to this entertainment episode?
I'm just thinking right at the end. We didn't even get into YouTube and things like that. Or TikTok. We talked about some of those before. These can be highly, highly addictive.
Yeah.
One of the things I like about sports is they're not as addictive. You got to wait 2 days for a game for hockey, or
football,
basketball.
4 days. Yeah.
Football, you're waiting 4, 5, 6 days. There's not as much addiction there as well. We didn't get into that portion of the entertainment choices, but these things can be highly addicting as well. Wisdom.
Yep.
That's all we're looking for is make sure that you're wise in how you're doing it. You have to know yourself, and you have to be self-aware enough to say, this is really going to take me down a path I don't want to go. Therefore, be willing to avoid. That's what the godly young man does, is he puts aside his wants for a time to choose the greater good, to choose the thing that's going to help him be closer to God, help him be a better man. Whatever it is, once it goes in, can't come out. The other thing my dad always said is, if you know where that path leads, don't even look down it.
Yeah,
don't look down. Not like a foot down it. Don't even look down it, because it's, oh wow, I really want to watch that movie. I know where this goes. I'm not going to do it.
Your dad is like the shadow mascot of the Godly Men podcast. With all his quotes that you drop, that's awesome.
Yeah, we need to do a book of dad quotes, because there's a bazillion and one that are just fantastic. That's
awesome. With that being said, we're going to wrap up right there. This has been episode 47. We're inching ever closer to the coveted episode 50.
That's right.
Getting into Christmas time, too. We are in December, and my favorite time of the year. My birthday's coming up, and so yeah, it's a good time of year. Hope everybody's having a good month so far, getting ready for the holidays. But thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week with episode 48 of the Godly Men podcast. Thanks for watching.